Okay, Professor Nutt, we just had a session here where you did a talk about drugs and the work that you used to do when you were on the Advisory Council on the Misuse of Drugs. Do you think the way that governments and senior politicians handle the drug issue is correct?
Well, obviously not, because clearly what I said was what I thought, and they objected violently and sacked me. So I think we need a complete rethink about drugs, and we've got to go to a properly science-based policy.
So do you think the policy at the moment isn't science-based?
Well, there's a bit of it's science-based and a bit of it's moral-based and a bit of it's politically based, and it just confuses people. No one knows exactly what it means when a drug is in any particular class.
Why do you think that drugs are treated in a special way, in a way that maybe other aspects of people's lives aren't? I mean, you yourself made the comparison between ecstasy and horse riding, pointing out that horse riding is actually much more dangerous than ecstasy, and there was an outcry about it. Why do you think that happens?
I'm not entirely sure. I think it's partly because people don't think. People actually, they'd like to have a reflexive response to drugs, and so they really, they don't want to think about the true underpinning of what's going on. I think also people are confused because drugs like alcohol and tobacco are illegal, and they kind of deny the fact that they're drugs, and so they kind of a lot of people are very comfortable with the fact that the other drugs are things that bad people take, the underclass take, and alcohol is what sort of the middle class, the sort of the working, there's a sort of bias, I think, about drugs as well, and it's also a way of stigmatizing people. I think a lot of people kind of see drugs as associated with, as an excuse for stigmatizing users. So it's a complicated thing, but mostly I think it's ignorance and never really thinking through the real implications.
So if you could do one thing to change maybe the way our political system handles drugs, what would you do?
I would completely dismantle the classification system, and I would rebuild it in an evidence-based way, and I would remove the penalties for drug possession. I think people shouldn't be penalised for possessing drugs or using drugs. They should be treated a different way, like in Portugal. We should understand why they use them and try to minimise the harms. But I think imprisoning people for using drugs is truly the most expensive and ridiculous way of dealing with a problem.
Your new body, the Independent Council on Drugs, just briefly, how's that going to work? And do you think it'll be a rival to the Advisory Council on the Misuse of Drugs? So
we've just renamed it, actually. We had the first meeting last week, and it's now called the Independent Scientific Committee on Drugs. It's 20 top scientists, a lot of them from the ACMD, spanning all the range of science, right through from chemistry to human pharmacology and clinical experience. Yeah, I think this will become the voice of science on drugs in the country. I think the ACMD science group has pretty much disbanded. There's only 2 scientists left. They cannot do the science. I'm hoping eventually the government may well say, okay, we'll let the independent committee do the science, and we'll contract them to produce scientific reports, and then the ACMD can do policy and we can do science. And then people will know exactly where they stand, because at present everything gets mixed up with political interference.
Do you think that the government actually will listen to your new committee then?
I think the government will have to listen, because the people will listen, the public will listen, the media will come, and they're already coming to us as the opinion on drugs. And I think eventually the government will have to accept that we are we're the best scientific opinion they can get on drugs, and why not come to us? To do something other than that would actually there'd been endless battles between us, our scientists, and their scientists, and our scientists we've got stronger, very strong scientists. People would see that we were telling the truth, and they would never believe what the government scientists said.
Professor Nutt, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.